Hello, friends, and welcome to the Driving Loaded podcast, where two former Army Rangers provide insight to their life post-military, a unique perspective on life, family, and careers. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. All right, welcome everyone. Today is a wonderful day. We have Dan Blakely here. This is the Driving Loaded podcast. My name is Felipe Peters, and we have Jordan Hillstrom as always. Things are going great. I'm really excited about this interview / episode today. I hope everyone had a wonderful Christmas and New Year. I know I did. I spent a lot of time with family. We had some very intense card game battles going on, which has become a favorite of ours. And so it's a whole thing for us. So it's a yearly thing. And no, it's good. Got to see the entire family. And I hope that, you all were able to see your family as well for this, Christmas, New Year. So Dan, Jordan, how are you guys?
Doing well.
Good.
Similar to you. Just, to us, we kept it pretty small. It was just me, my wife and my son, and then Beau, who's living with us as well.
Like Beau Jackson or?
No, Beau Simmons, my
okay.
business partner, childhood best friend.
Nice.
Yeah, we kept it pretty small, but it was good.
Good. Jordan?
Yeah, it was relatively small as well. We had a couple extended families come by, and we, we got into a pretty heated game of Monopoly Junior. My wife actually threatened to punch me in the face a couple of times. Whoa. Apparently, for me, unsportsmanlike conduct was coming out of my corner.
She throw flags?
Oh, she was throwing fist punch, man, like right to the face.
Hey, well, so we played a little bit of Monopoly. We played this new Monopoly version called Deal. So it's much quicker. It's supposed to be like a 15-minute game. It's very cutthroat. But our no fists were thrown. I still, don't have any holes in me. No one shivved me. So we all love each other still. But phase 10 is our big game. Actually, I came up with the idea to have a Chick-fil-A cow. That's the trophy. And so whoever wins the game wins the cow. And so my dad, who's the reigning champion, he's beaten us probably 75% of the time. So, yeah.
Did he win the cow?
Oh, yeah. He's won it already like 12 times. So.
Phase 10 shark.
Dude, it's intense. I'm telling you, it's intense. It's cutthroat. So, yeah. No, it's fun, though. It's good because I really feel like that game actually has brought our family closer together. Esprit de corps, if you will. And so, and then there's only 6 players there, and then the rest of the players are playing some other game, the rest of the family, because we have a fairly large family. So, but no, it was good. Everybody was hanging out together and playing games together, and, little kids were getting poopy every now and then for losing, but yeah, you got to learn how to lose gracefully. So
the power of gaming as a family is, especially like card games, board games, that thing is incredible. We did it always growing up, but anytime there's like tension in the house, I'm always like, let's play a game.
Yeah.
Let's just like not talk about anything else and let's just play a game.
Exactly. And as you were talking about that, I think that, we do the same. We actually look forward to it. And what's funny is that not once did we sit down and watch TV. The kids had it on a little bit, but we didn't, nothing. There was a lot of face-to-face interaction versus, everybody being on their phone or people being on TV or whatever. So it was good. Very refreshing.
Yeah.
No, I wish I was on the same boat as you guys, but if we're murdering each other over Monopoly Junior, when I bust out the real Monopoly, those shivs are about to come out.
Well, so one year for Christmas, my parents bought, I don't know if you guys remember them, but the big old like inflatable punching gloves.
Oh yeah.
Have you guys ever had those? Yeah.
Yeah.
And my parents bought those, and they thought it was a great idea because we were all like, young, I don't know, 8 to 12 or something like that. And so you think, oh, this is perfect to take out your aggression. It's not going to go too bad or overhand. No, those things still pack a punch, especially if you inflate them all the way. And people ended up flying all over the place, punching each other.
I just think of that movie Slapshot when they're taping on foil on their knuckles, and Dan's over there taping on sharp blunt objects on the end of these things. And
the thought crossed my mind for sure.
Hey,
That's
but
awesome.
everybody's still friends with their family, or so that's a win at the end of the day. But those boxing gloves are a good idea. We did it with the Hulk hands, the ones that make the noise.
Oh
Tho-
yeah.
yeah, those hurt too. Yeah, those are quite painful. But no, today, so we have Dan here with us, and he's not here just to BS with us for the most part. He actually has something very important going on, as always. His mind is going 1,000 miles an hour, and so he's working on a book. And so I'm going to learn about this somewhat firsthand. And Jordan and I talked about it a little bit, but I'm very curious, and because I know a lot of people are writing books and whatnot, and I've been listening to other podcasts about military members and whatnot, and I hear a lot of good things. I hear a lot of stories actually, and a story where you know, I was there in country at the time that happened, and so it helps bring up memories and whatnot. So,
Mhm.
Dan, go ahead and kind of give us a rundown, kind of for myself and for everyone listening, what's going on.
Yeah, so, this idea, I guess, for the book morphed into a book after a lot of conversations really over the last, I don't know, year or so.
Hmm.
Just trying to figure out, how can I personally give back to the veteran community? How can I actually benefit most? And I explored all kinds of things, and me and Jordan have talked about it multiple times offline. I've had ideas, and it's always been, there's somebody else out there already doing something similar,
Hmm.
or doing exactly what I had thought. There's over 48,000 organizations in the US that benefit veterans, which was a shock to me.
Whoa.
Yeah, did not know that until I started doing some research. And so, I kind of let go of it for a while, but then, as I said, my childhood best friend, Beau, decided to move out to North Carolina from California. And he's a fine art photographer. And he takes photographs of landscapes, of people, of all
Hmm.
kinds of things. He's in a few different galleries and sells his artwork, and he does a remarkable job. So we were talking one night, and he was just talking about, his next project, because he had just done a project to benefit Heroes and Horses,
Hmm.
which is a fantastic veteran organization that helps veterans struggling with PTSD or struggling with domestic abuse or drug addiction, whatever it may be, and takes them out to the ranch. And I think it's like, I want to say it's like 30 or 40 days that they learn how to, break
Whoa.
horses, ride in the outback, or, ride out and on the trails, eat beans and rice on a campfire every day. Like, that's what they do. And so it's an incredible opportunity for veterans to really just like get away from everything else and just focus on themselves, and be stressed and everything again, and just refocus on what's important in life. So he did a collection for that. And um, he was talking, and it was like, I've been thinking about doing a photo book. And I was like, wait, I was like, I've been trying to do something for veterans, but I haven't thought of something like this that would fit. I was like, why don't we work together and let's do a veteran photo book? And then we started talking, brainstorming, and it just turns out that this is, I mean, so incredibly timely. It's a perfect time for this to happen.
Hmm.
This year marks the 20-year anniversary of the global war on terror. September 11th,
Hmm.
2001 will be 20 years ago this year. And so, that's the idea behind the book, is to call it the 20-year war, and to tell the stories of all the veterans who have served overseas from all different ranks, walks of life, all different units and things, and to not just share their story, their battle stories, because there's plenty of books written out there that are about that, about the different firefights that people have been in, the different
Hmm.
operations. But it's much more about telling their story post military. What was
Hmm.
their transition like? Where were their struggles? Where was the heartache? And the idea behind that is, by making it a photo book, people can flip through it, see that these are real people. Oftentimes people put veterans just kind of in a stereotype and an idea of like what this person's supposed to be. But
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we're all just people. Like, we're just like everybody else. We're human beings. And so hopefully this book kind of is bridging that gap between civilians and veterans. And then hopefully veterans will also read these stories and be like, wow, man, there's a lot more people out there just like me that have struggled, post military service.
Mhm.
And so that's what we're hoping to do with this book. And hopefully, again, with it being 20 years, people can remember what people have had to go through, what veterans have had to go through, what families of veterans have had to go through in the last 20 years, on this continuous campaign that we're on. So that's kind of the big idea.
Mhm.
This book in general, because obviously, like we talked about before, we've had a lot of different brainstorming sessions about how can we serve this community, and not just the veteran community, but how do we bridge the gap between veterans and typical just general civilians, especially as it pertains to vocational type stuff. And obviously, then going back to the origin story of this book particularly, I think all three of us can resonate with the anniversary date being one of the biggest catalysts for all three of us and why we joined the military.
Hmm.
When you mentioned that, even like the 20-year anniversary, I got chills all over myself. Just it was so real to me. And I remember a couple of years ago, I was hanging out with some individuals from Long Island. After a hockey game, my brother and I went and hung out with some dudes. We didn't know them, and we started talking about who we were and our backgrounds. And my brother was like, "Hey, my brother's in the military," and we started talking a little bit. And these they were younger, and they a couple of them were gleaning into a conversation because they had lost family members in 9/11. And quite frankly, I didn't know anybody affected personally, but it was one nation. And I just felt this sense of calling, rather, to join the military. And I remember in that conversation, though, they're like, "Well, why did you join?" And I'm like, "Because of people like you, because I knew people like you had lost parents, siblings, loved ones. I had this calling to serve, and I didn't know anybody personally. And there was an immediate connection between them, not military, not veterans, but because we're humans and we were all United States citizens. And there was such a connection there. And I feel that like this book, the way you guys are going about it, could really do a good job at bridging that gap between the veterans and why they started their campaign on serving anyhow, to then post-military, really help that transition story. And it's not about the veteran, it's about our country. And honestly, I think this is going to be a good catalyst for growth in that area.
Hmm. Yeah, it's really interesting thinking back to 9/11, like how this all started. And a lot of people draw parallels between 9/11 and what happened at Pearl Harbor during World War II. And yes, absolutely, it was the two biggest attacks on our country's history. And the difference, though, between Pearl Harbor and 9/11 is Pearl Harbor happened. People in Hawaii obviously knew about it. People were getting telephone calls and stuff stateside on the continental US, started hearing about it. But, in the rural America, it was days, weeks, months, maybe even before people heard about it. Whereas when 9/11 happened, everybody witnessed it. Everybody saw it on TV. It was happening and unfolding like real time before their eyes. So like the conversation that we've had with a lot of people that have not served has been, especially if they were say in their younger years during when 9/11 happened, they were just before their prime or they're in their prime and stuff, and then they ultimately didn't serve. A lot of them end up saying to us like, I feel like I should have served. I should have, contributed. I should have done things. And I think hopefully this book is that opportunity to show how you can still serve, how you can help people who served in the military. Um, and it's a remarkable catalyst, really, this book between hopefully the United States as a whole. And this the veteran community is such a large portion of the United States. It's 6% of the total, or not 6%, 2%, 2 or 3% of the total US population. Um, and it's like it's a group that should not be forgotten. It's one that should be supported, and one that everybody should hopefully want to figure out how they can help. And again, I think that's why there's 48,000 plus veteran organizations out there. It's just trying to figure out the best way to to make everybody successful post military.
No, I totally agree with that. I do think that so often we think of veterans, and what's the first thing that typically pops to mind is like PTSD or things like that. And I think a lot of it has to do with like the bro vet mentality and a lot of the, especially the typical Hollywood type movies that have been produced. And a lot of it, the byproduct of veteran is they carry a lot of baggage with them. And not saying that some of those things are not true. That does not identify or characterize, adequately who veterans really are. Most veterans I run with, guys like you are high caliber people that are performing at high levels, and quite frankly are pulling me to a level that I probably wouldn't be unless I had you, side by side with me. And if more people could experience that brotherhood and that the professionalism that people like you guys carry, they would understand how much more the organization would thrive if they had people like you guys in their corner. And I think you guys are a very good example of what most veterans are really like. Very, very, we talk about Monopoly and playing FaceTime with their families. We're very real people. We're down to earth. We like to, have fun in the mud and go hunting and do all these things. But ultimately, we have a bigger calling as well. So there's this weird dichotomy that veterans do hold, though, that I do think could be cool to demonstrate through this book.
Yeah, absolutely. And go back to what you said at the beginning. Hopefully the conversation, does transition away from the broken vet or the hyper masculine veteran, the one that's trying to, shove too much of I don't know, a certain persona like that Hollywood veteran persona down your throat. And it's much more about like that is a percentage of veterans, but it's a pretty small percentage of veterans. I guarantee it. The larger percentage is people who are just trying to get it back into the workforce, trying to provide for their families, trying to make a living, just trying to make an impact in their community and trying to, um, just live out that American dream post military is that's probably, I would argue, the bulk of the people that leave service. Everybody I've talked to, that's what they want. So hopefully, again, this is just one more way to share that story and that message behind the veteran experience.
So with the veteran experience and you mentioning there's 48,000 organizations or charities or whatever you want to call it that are helping veterans, but yet we still see on a daily basis things like happening in Fort Hood, veterans committing suicide, dudes with problems. I still have problems every day. We're human beings. Nothing, it's not like since you get out, you go to counseling or whatever it is that you do, now all of a sudden everything's fixed magically. It's these things, they keep coming up. Yeah, they may get suppressed or you may deal with them for a little bit, they go away, and then they come back. It's kind of like a cycle. And
Yeah.
so it's I like the fact that there's that many organizations out there. My big thing that I've been thinking about lately a lot is like, but we still have a ton of people that are on the struggle bus, and
Yep.
so it's like, how do we help them? I mean, doing something is better than nothing. So I'm looking forward to the book, and I'm looking forward to the content of it, and the direction you guys are going. I think is really great because, as Jordan said, most people don't really know anything about veterans. They have their
Hmm.
their typical view of them that's been painted for our society. Yeah, there are some people that they really struggle with their issues, and so don't let that be the norm, or don't let that be the standard, because there are guys that are doing well that are, yeah, they may still have internal issues, things going on in their head or whatnot, but they're still doing really good things. Like you and Jordan, you guys are doing great things, and so I think that in this book, I think that could be highlighted as well. Hey, look, yeah, we might be broken a little bit, but you can always repair it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, the the biggest thing, that the reason why I think there's this, yes, we are broken, but I think um, all of us have a way of compartmentalizing to still be incredibly successful. But that's hopefully what the sharing of the stories is. And that's where, our podcast that kind of has spawned out of the book has come from, is telling a longer version of the stories that are in the book, for each of the veterans that are in it. And the idea is to share, because people who have not served in the military, I don't care how much research you do. I don't care how much you watch military movies. I don't care how many books you read. You do not understand the full experience of being and serving in the military. You just can't
agreed.
understand it from the experience of, how much time you spend getting excellent at your craft, right? So going through basic training. There's no other job that I can think of in the world where you have to spend 3 to 6 months in training completely separated from family just to get excellent at your job. You know what I mean? Like everywhere
Hmm.
else that you're going to a university, going to a college, going to, uh, you know, um, specialized degree programs and things like that, like you still at the end of the day have access to a phone call whenever you want it, have access to email, have access to, TV, phone, or TV, texting, whatever it is. You know what I mean? If you are away from family, or if you want to take a break, you could go home for a weekend or something if you're financially able.
Mm-hmm.
Take that a
You're
step. Oh, take that a step further, Dan. Think about the idea of, let's say, infantry. We all three of us went through the same, probably barracks in Georgia, right? The idea of taking, rural farm kids, young individuals like Pete from Mexico, migrating to America, but a very nice, down to earth family, and taking them through an environment where you're going from a regular life to train these people how to be killers. And
Mhm.
not to over glorify that, but think about this. You'd say things like kill, 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 cold blue steel, like
Yeah.
1,000 times a day. What does that even mean? I don't know. But everything you did revolved around killing. Everything you were talking about, everything you trained about was how to take out an enemy combatant. Now that's the job you signed up for, and you have to be, those are skill sets you have to hone and learn, and be a master at that trade, like you mentioned. But that's not just going to school and learning a trade. That's like hardwiring your brain to do something that I don't believe is typically, we'll call it, quote, air quotes, normal. Um, but there's so much more depth to that conversation that I do think needs to be explored on the long term consequences, and how do we make it to, we talk about how do we make a true change. I think your organization, which we'll get into in a minute here, the deeper why, you talk about how do you fix this. Well, I think it's a culture change, not just of civilians and the veterans getting out, working together, but I think that's a governmental factor I think could really be talked about, is when you out process soldiers, what kind of process do you put them through? How can we set them up for success and actually bring them through a series of, like, debriefing over time, and train them how to be part of, assimilate back to society, instead
Mhm.
of, hey, you're working on, you deploy, you get back on a Tuesday, and a month later you're on the streets, you hardly got a handshake, right? There's no wind down time, there's no understanding what it means to be, what's your new normal that you're thrown into. It's a recipe for, utter failure.
Mhm.
And I think it's a true cultural shift at every level that has to happen to make, some of these biases go away, to make it more of a mainstream thing. But I guess one thing I want to kind of probe into here is, the book is something that I believe strongly in. I think it's going to do wonders. I think a lot of people will read this and be impacted by it. But I know your why is deeper than the book. I know you've
Mhm.
had a greater sense to serve this community. So once this book goes away, you're still going to have a podcast and maybe round two of the book. But you had mentioned starting a company that would support the book, but also support a greater mission. I don't know if you can dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so, through my experience, and I'm sure you guys have went through this. So when I went to school, I went to college, I got some good degrees, I feel like. Um, but every time I would apply somewhere, or every time I would go to a career fair, things like that, people would completely skip over my military experience. They would say, "Oh, you were in the military? Cool, that's awesome." And then look at what I did for school. Did I have the degree to qualify me for that job? And I always told them, I was like, I spent 6 years in the military. 4 of those years were in a leadership position. I deployed 6 times. I, never lost anybody, never lost a piece of equipment. I was responsible for like $2 million worth of equipment on a daily basis. And all of that just went right over their head. Didn't care. And then I would be like, okay, and I got my degree in engineering physics. And they'd be like, oh, tell me more about that program. It's like that just completely misses them. So my idea for this company is to change that conversation, to educate companies on what it really is like to serve in the military. What skill sets do you actually gain from service? The level of leadership in team building that you have to go through, and even a junior leadership role in the military, is far and beyond what a civilian sector spends on their employees daily. Like, it's far and beyond what companies would invest in leadership development within their company. So knowing that you're hiring somebody who's a natural born leader, or maybe not natural born, but a trained leader, and then somebody who is very well trainable, already sets up your companies for success. And so explaining that, and that those aspects to companies, so that they can open their eyes and realize, wow, we need to really not only hire veterans because I know they can make our teams and our companies successful, but we also need to hire veterans to give a different perspective. There's a lot of companies who hire for cultural diversity, or they hire for gender diversity and things like that. Why not hire for experiential diversity, of having people who have went through different things in their life that can share um, their experiences. And I read a really disheartening study, I think last week, about veterans entering the workforce. And it said 50% of veterans don't even share that they're a veteran in their current jobs because they don't want to be stereotyped or looked upon or fired or done whatever, or asked the stupid questions of, how many people did you kill? Like, did you ever have to, um, I don't know, sleep outside? Like, just ask these really stupid questions. And so it's about changing that conversation and going about it, as opposed to putting all the emphasis on the veteran to change their, say, resume from the military to adapt it to a civilian. Let's talk to civilians to figure out how they can read a military resume, how they can read an ERB, how they can read a DD 214, and understand like how much experience this person actually has and how much they can contribute to them. So that's kind of the cruxus behind the company, is to engage with companies, engage with the HR firms, engage with the business leaders and the CEOs of business out there, and say, look, if we can find the right person for your company that is going to build your teams to be more successful, let's bring in a veteran who's already proven it, who has the years of experience to do it, and let's connect them with the right job within the company, within the organization. Because learning the technical, or what I'll say, um, hard skills for a job is honestly, for a veteran, I feel like is very easy. You know what I mean? Like, you've had to learn all your weapon systems. You've had to learn how to read, uh, however many technical manuals and handbooks and things like that, and be able to spit off everything verbatim out of that book so that it front and back, and there's no question about whether or not you're knowledgeable about it. Like, that's coming from the veteran experience because you had to learn that. So why can't a veteran learn that in the workplace, but then apply the soft skills that nobody else is getting, like leadership and team building?
I'll take that a step further. Do you guys remember in the barracks back in 275 and Seco, in the bathroom stalls, there was pictures of weapon systems and the specs, how far that weapon can shoot, how heavy it is, loaded, unloaded, the dry weight, whatever, like all these different parameters, they're put into your brain continuously throughout the day, even down to the bathroom, like they're pasted everywhere. That's the level of detail that these veterans come out with in so many different areas. And sure, a lot of that information is not applicable to their new job, sure. But what you do know is you have a foundation of a guy or girl that can take principles, learn them, apply them, and execute them at a high level in a very stressful environment. And I know all three of us obviously have all been to combat. We've all been through Ranger School and other, hard military type schools. So just from the get, if you interviewed any one of us, you'd understand that we have the resiliency to get through hard situations, that when obstacles come, we're not going to stop. So look at it from a financial standpoint. If I'm a CEO, a business owner, and I have to make a hiring decision, everybody you hire is at risk, sure.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at this person as, there's the huge upside, if they do work out, how much further are they going to bring my company's, bottom line because of what they can do? So obviously there's a lot of hurdles they have to jump through with, depending how technical the job is. And I get it, there's a lot of parameters that they're usually, fighting. But I think the onset, they're shooting themselves in the foot by not taking a harder look at most veterans. And I totally agree with what you're saying. And I've done interviewing for different companies, and I've had veterans come through and really downplay that. And then once I told them, hey, I'm a veteran, I'd love to hear more, they light up, like their shoulders rise up in their chair, and you can tell that they're released from something.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand that because I didn't live in that world. I went straight into the police world, and that was different. But even there was honestly biases there as well. So totally understand that concept into a very personable degree.
Yeah, and going back to what Pete said is like, I, I can't count the number of people who have been discouraged or been feeling like sitting with their emotions, or whatever the case may be, to where they sit on the, well, maybe I am broken, maybe I do have something wrong with me. And it's not that there is really something wrong with you, it's that You've went from an organization that was very purpose driven, that has mission focus of exactly what you're doing day in and day out. And now you're trying to find that in the workforce and it's not there. Like there's not that many jobs that, come to you and say, here's our company, but here's our purpose. Here's our exact why we're doing this. Come work for us and make us successful by, taking on this aspect of the job or this mission within our company and make it successful. Come work for us and do that. That opportunity does not exist for a lot of veterans. There are quite a few veteran or veteran owned organizations that do have that focus and do have that, but not enough to hire every veteran that's out there. Not enough to maximize effort, to make sure that there's not too many chiefs and not enough Indians. You know what I mean? Like there's definitely the sense that there needs to be more opportunities for veterans. Another study that LinkedIn actually did, and I was doing some research on it, which was pretty incredible, is it's I think it was, what is it? 40% of veterans are underemployed, which is much higher than the national average, which is like 20%, which is incredible to me
So
because it's because
explain the underemployed. I think I
so
know what you mean, but for people
underemployed
listening.
versus unemployed. So unemployed means obviously you don't have a job. Underemployed means that you have more credentials and experience to have you in a higher position within a company than you currently hold.
Mhm.
So, and again, that's going back to, for instance, I had 6 years of military experience. Yes, I did get hired into a slightly higher job than, other people maybe straight out of college, but that's because I had the right connection to get me in with the company I'm in right now. Whereas when I was interviewing for all these other companies that I was applying for, it was all going to be entry level. It was all going to be base ground, ground floor jobs, just like everybody else coming out of college. Even though I had a higher level degree, I actually at that point had 11 years of leadership experience because I was leading the solar vehicle team while I was, at App State.
Mhm.
But they breeze past all of that. That's not considered experience to a lot of people. And so that's where the conversation needs to change, and where, again, the bringing more veterans into the fold and providing purpose and making it more of a mission driven business is where veterans are going to be successful. A lot of veterans, again, same study, that enter the workforce end up wanting to leave their job because they don't have continued purpose. They aren't getting supported
Mhm.
by their jobs. They're not getting, challenged enough, because every day in the military we were challenged with something new. We were always given something that was outside of our comfort zone, outside of our everyday job that we thought, quote unquote, this is my job and these are duties and responsibilities. You were always given something new and challenged. That doesn't happen in the workforce. So, yes, there is a conversation of, preparing veterans to enter the workforce, but there's also, again, that conversation of talk to business leaders, tell them you can create more for your business with hiring the right people to steer your business towards growth. And I think veterans are the perfect population to pull that from.
So with let me see if I understand this correctly. So you're doing the book, but the book spurred basically a company itself. And if I'm hearing it correctly, it's basically you guys are going to consult or inform. I guess in a way, I don't know what that structure would look like, but I mean I like the sound of it because the more informed people are, the better they can make the decisions, the necessary decisions in the business, especially if it's a large corporation. There's a lot of moving pieces and whatnot. But I think with you guys coming in and saying, "Hey, look, you have a veteran here, and yes, everybody's different or whatever, but you have somebody that's been in for 4, 8, 12, 20 years." That shows a level of dedication in my book. Like
Yep.
this person, this individual, this soldier was, look how dedicated they were. Okay, they stayed for 4 years. That's 4 years. Your 4 years of nonstop training to do what? To improve yourself, to improve your unit, to improve your company, your platoon, whatever it is. And so I think that, like you said, carries a lot of weight. There's a lot of loyalty, a lot of dedication there. And for an employer to skip over that, like that's a huge mistake. And just like you, I spent a lot of time in a leadership position, and with in charge of millions of dollars worth of crap. And where in the civilian sector do you find that level of leadership or responsibility, in someone? And a lot of people just don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And
Mhm.
so I'm guessing, so how would you guys approach or attack? I don't want to use the word attack because people get butthurt, but attack
Use it,
the
use it, use it.
attack. Well, it is an issue. We're attacking Dan's, Jordan and Dan are attacking the issue of you know having a translator. We always had translators overseas. You guys are going to be the translators now for people like me, other veterans out there. Do you just go up to the company X and say, "Hey, man, this is who we are. This is what we do, and this is what we can provide for you." I guess, is that how it works, or do
Yeah.
you?
So obviously the structure of this company is going to be incredibly important in how we go about, engaging with companies and showing real results for them. So, right now we're in the early stages where I'm doing a ton of research, where I'm, getting all my data to support my hypothesis of like how this will work. Um, but ultimately, what it comes down to is consultations. So, how do you consult with a company to say, hey, if you hire X veterans, your business is going to grow by X percent, or your teams are going to be better fit by, whatever it is. So, there's definitely metrics that need to go behind it that's going to support a smart business decision because let's be honest, a lot of businesses don't just make decisions just because it sounds good. They want to see how it's going to work out and benefit them, make them money,
Mhm.
um, you know, make better employees, whatever it's going to be. And so that is the first part of this is how can we highlight successful transitions of veterans getting into the workforce, and that's what I'm ultimately doing right now, and that's also kind of what the book is doing, is showing these success stories, even some of the not successful stories, but we're sharing why it wasn't successful, which always have a very common theme behind them, is that lack of purpose, lack of mission, lack of drive from the company, whatever it is. Um, so a consultation base is obviously clearly there. The second aspect of this that we haven't talked about is more of a social engagement and training. So an unconscious bias training. Like
Mhm.
again, when a veteran comes into the organization, what are the types of things you should and should not obviously say? Every company, every major corporation, I just went through one this week, where it was bias training, cultural diversity training that I had to do. And everywhere in there, it talks about all these specific groups, ethnic, gender, sexual orientation groups. Never once do they ever talk about veterans. And I get it. I understand it because technically we are all from different backgrounds. We all fit in those different ethnic and gender and sexual orientation groups, but we are also a very, very, very different population than the standard civilian population that comes into a business.
Can I ask a question, or maybe stir the pot some here?
Yeah.
And I might step on a toe or two. I'm okay with that right here. I believe in being conscious of how we operate daily. Sometimes we can say something because we have the freedom, but does it mean it's right? And I would surmise it not. We should be sensitive to a point, right? And just because we're right, you still have to communicate effectively. So the tonality is important. The way we approach things is important. At the same time, the people that are driving a lot of these conversations about who should be protected, what word should be protected, usually have a certain group behind them pushing some of this stuff. And so that's where my concern is. There's no advocacy really in the veteran community because there's a
Mhm.
total difference from talking about gender bias to veteran bias. There's a huge divide there, and is one more important? I'm not going to argue that today. But the idea of having an advocacy group behind the scenes pushing that is something I don't see in any real regard in the veteran community. And
Yeah.
part of that, my concern would be, is I don't think pandering necessarily is always successful either. To try to put someone on a pedestal and make it so soft that you can't say anything that's going to offend them, because life is tough. Like, it doesn't just stop because you get offended. So this snowflake mentality has to be, we think about this carefully. And I'm not saying that the diversity training and a lot of these unconscious bias training are for naught. I think they're important. We should go after them because we all have biases somewhere.
Well,
But there's a balancing act, I guess, I want to kind of throw out into the mix here.
yep. So I want to be very clear. I'm not saying that if I went into a training session that I would say, don't talk to veterans about X, Y, and Z, because I think veterans should be more open to talk to their coworkers, to talk to their families, to talk to, any people about the experiences that they've gone through, because they are important and they're applicable to business, even though people may not draw a direct line, but there are clear parallels between business and military experience. And so I want the conversation to happen. What I don't want to happen is for, say, a day where somebody does make that stupid question of, how many people did you kill? And then somebody freaks out and is like, are you fucking retarded? And freaks out on them and blows up. And that's what people hear. And then they get fired. And that happened to a buddy of mine. And I'm like, it's not an uncommon thing. It happens. And what the education is more so towards is like educating what the military experience looks like. How can we capitalize on it? But let's be smart about how we have these conversations. And then let's be smart about how we overreact when a veteran does finally react to somebody asking a really dumb question. Because right now, like, I have another friend who made a joke that in the military would have been incredibly, let's just be honest, funny, but it was insensitive to a certain gender, and it did not translate. It did not carry, obviously, in the civilian world. And he got fired the very next day because there was an HR complaint about the joke that he made. And I get it. Yes, to a certain extent, veterans need to understand what environment they're in, but I don't think something like that, and it was not that bad. I don't really want to say it on here, but it was really not that bad. And he got fired, I think the very next day or 2 days later or something like that. And it's like just having the understanding of what we've gone through and what our experiences are, what we can bring to the table, which I think will outweigh maybe a time or two where a veteran gets super frustrated with, say, some college kid who just doesn't have a strong work ethic, and they get yelled at because that's what we did in the military, and that's ultimately not right in the civilian world. But just retrain the veteran, be like, hey, just remember, I know this is what it was like in the military, but we're in the corporate world. We kind of gotta tone it down a little bit different. Let's figure out some strategies that you can take your experience but attack it differently with that person.
I love the approach. And I think too, if you can thread the needle here, because this is a very delicate balance too. But you talk about this example. What kind of ROI was in that decision? So if that person complained, I think you should address the complaint adequately, and you should understand is there a way we can fix this internally, and maybe it's suspension, maybe it's docket pay, all that kind of stuff. I don't know. But now, how much money did the business potentially lose by firing this individual? So obviously, we know that turnover. There's a percentage of turnover rate that you have to be able to account for. There's profit loss there. There's that skill and talent that he's been taught, and how much ROI did he bring to the company? So now
Mhm.
you have that whole equation that we're just completely discounting because of one complaint. Now, if there's a context that has to be brought, there's many complaints, all that kind of stuff, sure. But at face value, one complaint, is a termination. I think as society too, we have to have a little bit stronger shoulders to understand that we can't make these knee-jerk reactions. Sure, let's be
Mhm.
sensitive. Let's also understand that we're so much more, three-dimensional people than this story kind of played out as. So I think that's an area where I'd be super intrigued on conversations about how the military and veteran community can really be that tip of the spear with understanding how to react appropriately when people do ask stupid questions, and that happens on a daily, sure.
Mhm.
But how do we be a little bit stronger and a little bit more of the humble presence to be able to say, yeah, it's a stupid question, but I'm not going to blow up still. Like, I'm still going to kind of walk my walk regardless of these fools around me, right? And maybe we can start changing the dialogue, because we should be holding ourselves with a little bit higher accountability when it comes to a lot of the stuff. The reactions we have, they matter, and we should be in control of that. So I never will really excuse behavior like that. If you've been to combat and ranger school and you can control yourself there, you can dang sure control yourself in an environment in a professional setting if
Yep.
someone says something stupid. So that's the stuff I think you guys could affect for the military community as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I'm hoping we can highlight things like that from the book or from, however we can. Cause again, 48,000 plus veteran organizations that are out there. There's tons that are transition organizations that help veterans figure out like how to rewrite their resume and transition and land jobs and things like that, which is awesome. Fantastic. And that needs to continue. And part of that could also be, how do you have more conversations and not freak out, in the workplace on people. So you absolutely holding yourself accountable. I think where our approach is in the other side, right? Is to come around the other way. But it's definitely a delicate balance between the two.
Yeah,
Sure.
so alibi first. I'm gonna need that comment or that joke or whatever via text message because my interest has been piqued because I do know what you're talking about. We have to know our audience basically. Whenever we're at work or even in public or whatever, we're having a conversation with people. Yes, we have a very dark sense of humor. There's other professions that have very dark senses of humor, which is medical community. Listening to
Mhm.
some of them and the stuff they say, I'm like, whoa, okay, all right, buzzinga.
You kiss
Yeah,
your mom with those lips.
yeah, exactly. And so, it doesn't really bother me. There's a lot of things that can be said that don't really bother me. I do know though, and I've had the experience that I probably said some things I shouldn't. And so I need to watch my audience is basically, you have to gauge it a little bit. And like Jordan said, is like, was it really worth it firing the guy? Because usually in the military, you'll get like an Article 15, lose pay,
Mhm.
lose time, blah, blah, blah. And I think, yeah, that probably been a little bit more appropriate, but hey, whatever. It is what it is with that. Sometimes you have to learn the hard way. Um, and so with the company itself, are you going to employ veterans? Are you going to have like, hey, something to reach out to veterans and say, hey, look, this is what this company does. We can help you. You can be on the list, or how's all that going to work?
So, you know, I would be lying if I didn't tell you it's very, very early, obviously, in the
Hmm.
development of this company. But I think it's a mix of all those things.
Hmm.
I would love to create a network where, we work with businesses that do become veteran friendly, that do want to hire veterans, and then that becomes a conduit between people separating from service, us kind of reviewing and understanding what their capabilities and experiences were in the military, where they want to go in their careers, and then connecting them with the right job, with the right company.
Hmm.
And I would love for that to be the full chain. The the hard part obviously in the beginning of a company is developing those relationships and getting with those companies and understanding, who is open to that as a company to hire more veterans. And then as a veteran coming out as transition, obviously, we need to do a good enough job to attract veterans to want to come through. So I don't know exactly what that's going to look like. But I do want to create an easy pipeline for people who especially have plenty of experience, like medium or senior level, NCOs, because really those are the people who have a lot of leadership experience and potential in the workforce that honestly are not getting enough attention. We didn't hit on this at all really, but um, I did want to say, like, you never really hear too many stories about officers coming out of the military and having problems finding a job. And that's
Hmm.
because in the civilian world, when you look at an officer, a general officer, even that maybe sat in an S shop their entire life, didn't really do a whole lot, don't have a whole lot of leadership. Just having that, oh, I was an officer and I graduated from West Point, like boom, right away. That goes to the top of their, interview list. They're like, we need to talk to that guy.
Hmm.
Why is it though? And that person maybe only served 4 years. Why is it though when a senior NCO, somebody who's served 10, 12, 15, 20 years, then has their resume on the top? It's like, oh, you were just a non commissioned officer. I don't really know what that means. Doesn't
Hmm.
matter. All of
Hmm.
your previous years of experience doesn't matter to me. Um, so yeah, it's going to be an interesting transition and see how this all works out. But I'm really hoping that through the book, through our podcast, through all these other engagements, we can build up a large enough network that businesses start reaching out to us and say, hey, we want to hire more veterans. How can we do this?
Okay. Yeah. No, I think that's no, I like it because right now you have the world at your feet and you can kind of design this and you're obviously you're going to learn every day.
Yep.
And so I think it's great though that the approach you guys are taking, because it's not something that I ever thought of. I've thought of different things like how to help veterans transition, blah blah blah, but everything that I've thought of has already been done and people are doing it, and this and that and the other. And I'll put myself out there as you're talking about a 4-year captain from West Point. And then myself, who I was in for 15 and a half years, and I was a senior E7. And so he gets looked at before I do because I don't have that fancy piece of paper that says bachelor's degree on there. But I've got I think I'll pat myself on the back here. I guess I have a master's degree in what I did for my job and being
Absolutely.
overseas, and and so, but that doesn't carry any weight, and that really hurt a lot because I've experienced that. I've put in resumes and things like that, and it just got overlooked
Yep.
because to me, I'm like, well, what the hell, Like I did all this stuff. I was in these, in a premier raid force of the army, and I did all these things, and I was in a leadership position in this multiple positions, uh, in different countries, and all these crazy things that go on. And it's like, yeah, but you don't have a bachelor's degree. Like, yeah, I don't. That's just to me, that's just a piece of paper. To
Yep.
me, experience is what I'd rather hire somebody based on experience rather than just a piece of paper that says, yeah, they went to college for 4 years. But
You know what though? It's not these civilian company and these HR and these hiring acquisition talent specialists or whatever you call them nowadays. It's not their fault. What they know is from their perception of who we are. So the movies,
Yep.
the shows, the whatnots, right? And most of those do not paint a picture where these NCOs can handle themselves in a professional setting because they're spouting off about these ridiculous jokes, right? They're doing these things that are not in sync with what the business needs to be doing to make money. So let's paint a better picture. Let's paint a picture that when we come in, we're going to make your company thrive. We're going to make you more money. We're going to make you like everything we do, everything we touch is going to be better because we're here. So let's start now. Let's paint that narrative. And sure, you can't boil the ocean in a day, but you know what? One day at a time, that sun's getting brighter and brighter, right?
Yeah. No, it's I'm glad you kind of led into that portion. Is, there's been a lot of opportunities too that I don't want to speak to yet, but there's definitely a lot of things that have come out from just starting up this book, from starting the conversations that we've had, that is connecting with other organizations that are spinning up to try and change that narrative, to try and change the, I guess, the idea and stereotype that so many people have of what veterans are, so that we can share more of the other story of the human, of the human first, with a veteran experience. And I'm excited for that portion to come eventually.
mhm.
And I think when this other company that we're kind of working with comes to reality, hopefully that is going to change that perspective.
No, that's good. I'm excited for it. I'm sure you will keep us updated. Two things. So first, you said you started a podcast, and that was with your buddy Beau, or
Yep. Yep.
uh,
Me and Beau started a podcast called Never Left Behind. And
mhm,
again, the podcast is structured in a way, similar way the book is, but I thought it was important. In the book, you've got the photos of the person and you've got a short story, but you can't fit
mhm,
enough on that piece of paper to
mhm,
paint a whole picture of who this person is. So the podcast is a longer format of that to capture their whole story. So we go a little bit, into their military experience, but then much more into their transition and philosophy on life and things like that. So it's a lot different than um, some other podcasts that may just focus on, what did you do in combat? Tell us a cool war story or things
mhm.
like that. You know what I mean? It'll be much more about, what is the transition. So similar kind of to this, where you're talking about everyday life, but we're focusing heavily on that transition piece.
Okay, yeah. So I was listening to Mentors for Mill, and but we'll put your podcast in the notes as well, to where people can link to that and whatnot. And then I was listening to the podcast, and they had a Delta Force guy on there. He was an operator, a shooter, assaulter, whatever you want to call him. So of course, most people are like, "Sweet, we're gonna hear all these cool stories about he shooting people in the face." And it's like he told some stories about being deployed and whatnot, but he really didn't focus on it that much. And I really wasn't as interested in his war stories, quote unquote, than the problems that he had. It sounds funny,
Yeah.
but I was, because I can relate to so many things that he had went through. He went to uh, basic training. He had a kind of a crapshoot with the recruiters and blah blah blah, and he finally got a RIP contract, option 40. Went to RIP. He was in regiment for 375 for like a year, got RFS, and then went to the big army and did all these things, and eventually went to Delta Force and was there, and he had to leave for certain reasons, whatever. And just all the different things that he had gone through in his life, his failures, his successes, and whatnot. I was more focused on the failures and the successes, not so much like, yeah, he got to shoot, an HVT in the face or went to Tora Bora or whatever it is. Like, that's cool, man. I get it. But to me, the real story is the transition, the struggles, the victories, the successes that, this guy has. Of course, he's working for a, top company or whatever, but it's not without its own issues. And so I think that, highlighting, like you said, the transition piece is I feel like very, very important, because the military is done. It's over with. It's in the past. And so what are we doing now? We can't relive our glory days unless you want to go be a contractor or whatever it is. So let's focus on, on that transition. And then, like you said, their philosophy and whatnot. Do you guys have a lot of interviews already done for the book, or you have a lot of individual, I guess, a diverse group of veterans?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited. So we've interviewed, or we've done 6 episodes so far. So we just released our first one Monday. We're releasing another one this coming Monday. So we'll release them weekly. The first episode is about me, just because it's basically Beau interviewing me about my military experience. Because honestly, it's the first time that I've shared it as in depth as this. And then second episode is much more about, our company, what are we looking to do, what's this book about, and then from there on, it's been veterans. So we've interviewed 4 veterans so far that we have teed up to release weekly again, and we've got honestly a roster of probably like 20 now that we're looking at interviewing.
Yeah.
But there's actually a few civilians as well that we're going to interview, and the reason we're interviewing them is because they have done so much for the veteran community that we want to understand like what has wired them to want to help veterans with transition.
Hmm.
And so we're going to also be interviewing them. So yeah, I'm super pumped about it, excited about the whole list of groups of people. I mean, we have people all the way from, people who got out as like a PFC or a specialist, all the way up to generals that we're getting for this podcast.
Nice.
Like
Nice.
it's pretty incredible how much it's grown in a short period of time.
No, that's incredible, and I do like the fact that you guys are interviewing civilians.
Yeah.
When you mentioned that, I'm glad that you guys are doing that, because both civilians and military, veterans and whatnot, they need to hear that story from that civilian that has that mindset or that thought process or whatever that is driving them towards the veterans, and they see the benefit of having veterans there, and they see a gold mine of leaders,
Hmm.
future, whatever you want to call them, presidents, team leaders, CEOs, whatever you want to call it. And so I'm glad that you guys are doing that, because I'm looking forward to hearing what the civilians have to say, almost more than the military folks.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
I agree. I know we have a hard stop here. I know some things are going on here, but I wanted to get out there to make sure we are very, I guess, pragmatic in nature here. This is early on. You have a lot of moving pieces still, and you guys are working through some, some kinks here and there. You're on a cool mission, and I think, I have no doubt that's going to be, uber successful. But where you're at right now, I guess just if you can let us know, what we could do, how we could serve you and your mission, and how we can kind of spread the word, and what things you need as far as support right now from the communities, and whether it's civilian or veteran.
Yeah. So right now, for the book's sake, we're looking at officially. We have a publisher. We have everything in the works for it. Where we're looking at launching the pre-order on some pretty important dates. So pre-order on July 4th, and then we're launching the actual book on September 11th. And we haven't nailed down the venue yet, but we're in a conversation that we think we know exactly where we're going to have the venue for the release. And it's going to be a very important site to the veteran community. And I think it's going to be pretty impactful to folks who are able to attend, but just even knowing where it's going to be, people are going to be like, wow, that's an awesome place to release at. Um, we just need to get more stories, so more veterans that want to be included in the book. We're seeking. Beau is on the road right now on a road trip across the United States and back, and we've got, I think, 20 or 30 veterans we're already interviewing during this road trip. And then once he returns back to North Carolina, we're hitting the East Coast. So people up and down the Eastern Seaboard, even inland a little bit, maybe up to Mississippi. We'll travel to you. You don't necessarily have to come to us if you want to be included in this book. And again, all walks of life, all stories. We have not been, restricted on who we're talking to, who wants to share their story, who wants to have their photo in a book. Um, and then, outside of the book, or still with the book, we're in the process of trying to make this happen. And so it's not cheap. You have to pay for books up front. I didn't know that. I mean, I did a little bit, but I got re-educated about how much that's going to be, especially for a nice photo book. So obviously, we're looking at people who are interested in becoming supporters and investors in this book. Um, and then the Never Left Behind podcast, like people, if they could tune in and listen to it. I hope more people listen to your guys' podcast as well too, because if people can understand the day-to-day life of a veteran, and realize how much it connects with them, that's ultimately what we're trying to do as well, is that transition story, and understand that we had an experience, but we're just like everybody else. So yeah.
So with that, basically, we'll put it in plain English. Basically, asking for money for the book. I mean, that's the that's the way my mind operates. Very plain English, and I understand it. You need money for that. Absolutely. You don't have some giant company that's going to sponsor your book and dole out thousands of dollars and whatnot. Have you guys set up any like I don't want to say GoFundMe, but like Patreon or some sort of account or something where they can like, hey, I want to donate $20 to your book. Is there a link, or if there is, just let me know and I'll put it in all the notes and everything, or you can give it a plug now or whatever you want to do.
Not yet, but we have been discussing Patreon to raise for that. The pre-order is going to be obviously the biggest one, because that'll kind of dictate how many books we order in the long run. Because you say everything costs $20 or something a book, or whatever whatever the cost is. Obviously, as you scale that's more and more money you have to put forward. So yeah, just that pre-order date is going to be important for us to determine how much we can purchase it. And the one thing I didn't cover is this book is not just to bring money back into my pocket. Obviously we need to financially support ourselves for this book. However, we are donating a pretty significant amount of all profits back to veteran organizations that we've been connected with, that we know have actually provided real purpose to veterans, that have not just provided handouts, but more so have changed veterans' lives. And we've heard it directly from the veterans themselves who have been in these organizations. So we're going to be giving back to them to keep promoting them so that they can continue to help veterans.
That's awesome. No, I'm glad to hear it. I look forward to it. I will definitely be purchasing a copy. So I can't wait to hear all these stories and the way you guys move forward and everything with it. So any last comments there, Jordan or Dan?
No, I'm just I'm super appreciative of what you guys are doing, and it's awesome to be part of it, even in a small regard that we are. So anything you need, obviously, we're here for you, and it's just really fun to be part of this group of people, because your success bleeds over into my life. We run together in a lot of different circles, and it's lifting me up. So the harder you run, it's making you run faster, right? So that's a blessing in itself. And I think more veterans need to have people like you around them. So big huge pat in the back to what you're doing, and we're going to be right there with you when you cross that finish line to get the book going. And then the next milestone ahead of you, we're going to keep going with you.
Awesome. Well, I can't appreciate you both enough, and thanks for having me back on again, and can't wait to talk some more.
Absolutely. We're definitely going to do this again. We'll stay updated with Dan. Thank you, Dan. Thanks, Jordan. Hope you guys have a great week and a great new year.
Awesome. You too.